My first question would actually be for you to tell a bit more about the self-defense classes, kind of what they look like, and what is the idea and the intention that you have?
Sure. Pretty Deadly Self-Defense is a self-defense program that is for women, as you mentioned, for anyone who identifies as a woman. But we also have self-defense classes for trans men, for LGBTQ people, sometimes only for men as well. So it's not restricted only to women, although women are our main focus. So just to kind of identify that, because we're a very inclusive and intersectional program. So we really want to be careful about not making people feel excluded, but also to understand that each group has its own special needs and its own specific situations that they deal with or are confronted with. So we don't necessarily train everybody all together, but we do not exclude any particular gender or identifier. We train, we have a paid program where people register for courses from one of our trainers, and they take our live course is a 5-week course for one level, or our online course, it's 5 classes, and the trainers can teach those classes as they wish. They each have, both online and live courses have 3 levels, level 1, level 2, level 3, not particularly creatively named, but it's clear anyway. And then we also have a program, we have an outreach program that provides free self-defense training for refugees, for homeless women, for people who are in much more vulnerable and immediate situations who may not have the funds to sign up for a course. All of our paid courses, basically, the entire paid aspect of our program goes to fund our volunteer and outreach programs. So that's the kind of overview, which isn't actually answering the question that you asked. The program itself.
Good to get more information. Yeah.
More clear. It's relevant at any rate. But the program itself is based on my own experience as a violent crime survivor, my own experience just as a woman moving around the world. I've experienced a lot of things that most women have, from microaggressions to much more larger transgressions, and my 20 years of martial arts training. So I got so much from martial arts, not just in the physical techniques, but more about learning how to use my body in a really effective way. And I found that for me, that was a different kind of learning through movement and learning through my body, as opposed to learning from reading stuff or doing some kind of academic work or watching webinars or whatever it is. This was a very visceral way of learning that was a very direct connection to me learning how to trust myself and trust my body to a much more profound degree than I had before I studied martial arts. So Pretty Deadly takes some of those kind of the essence of the things that I found most important and most beneficial to me in martial arts and puts them into a self-defense course. So in a way, it's a vehicle to kind of, it's a practical vehicle to help share some of the benefit that I received from learning martial arts. The self-defense program is, of course, about learning self-defense. So it's about learning to defend yourself in a range of situations. In our first level program, we learned some basic self-defense moves, starting with how to make a fist, because a lot of people actually don't know. And we progressed to more specific social environments that also address having a social cost in our second level. And then in our third level, we progressed to intimate situations, whether it's on a date or it's someone that's entered your home without your permission or whatever it is. So there is a progression, but each level actually stands on its own. So if you only take level 1, you're fine. You're covered with basic movements. But what it really is also getting a deeper understanding of how our self-defense system works, how we are actually already defending ourselves every single day without realizing it. And kind of making that transformation of, you know, oh my God, I'm a lot more powerful than I thought I was, which is a great thing to learn about yourself, I think, and gives you a lot of confidence to either try new things or to continue learning and see what else you can get out of it. And it is for real life situations. I mean, it's not like made up situations, you know, so if some guy comes out of nowhere and does this one specific thing, you have to do this and that. It's really for the things that we as women or as vulnerable people in other vulnerable demographics experience on a regular basis, from street harassment all the way to something much more violent and physical. The refugee program was developed specifically for the refugee population here in Berlin, because that's the first one that I worked with. And a lot of refugee women, when they're coming to Berlin, are confronted with quite a few obstacles. There's a language barrier often. There's a massive culture shock. There's already trauma they may be carrying with them, already a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. But there's just a lot of anxiety about, how do I navigate this new city that I'm dealing with all this other stuff. And on top of that, I don't feel confident enough to just like walk to the end of the street to the market. And so women in these groups, and it's not that different from women who move to a big city from another country anyway, can often become sort of prisoners in their own homes through their own fear, not necessarily being held there by someone else, but their world becomes very small.
Yes, this is really interesting. The first time I heard you talk about your classes, and now as well, is that I mean, there's a lot of interesting things, but this moment where it seems like you are dealing with so much more than just like a technique and learning people certain stuff in terms of like physical training, but like there's this whole range of actually like psychological things that you're tackling and like maneuvering.
There's real research that has gone into building the program, real psychological data, real scientific data, real trauma recovery data, research about refugees and migrants, as well as other groups that take our courses. So it's coming from personal experience, personal training, as well as just a vast amount of additional research and data. But all of that is delivered through basic self-defense techniques, and games. So the classes are structured, regardless of who the group is that's taking the class. The classes are structured through identifying movements that we do in our daily lives, and then seeing how we can translate those over to self-defense situations. That has a specific effect. Just making that connection for yourself creates a little aha moment, like, oh, okay, I see, I've never made this connection before, but now I get how it works. You are more likely to retain it, and you are more likely to then go on to learn the next thing and feel confident that you can do it. So I gave you a whole bunch of kind of background information about the program, but if you were participating in the program, what you would be getting are self-defense techniques. You would be getting some games and exercises that we've devised to help support the techniques that you're learning and ideas of situational awareness and confidence, et cetera. But they're games. Everything is presented as a game. I mean, that sounded weird, but there are games that we present. There's no direct, like, let me sit you down and lecture you about all this kind of stuff. It's learning through movement, and it's learning through making these physical connections. And from these physical connections, you make emotional and psychological connections as well. That helps build your confidence and helps you move forward, basically.
And I guess my second question would be, how did you decide to do it? Like, what was the path that took you there?
So this is on my website, that I am a victim of violent crime that happened a long time ago now. It's this year is 21 years ago, actually. So my violent crime is old enough to drink in the United States, whatever that means. But in the days following, like immediately following after that event, I was suffering a trauma loop, which I didn't understand at the time because I didn't understand how they work. But that simply means that after going through a massively traumatic experience, your brain kind of replays it over and over again, mostly looking for a place to file it away, because it's new information with no contexts, and that's what makes it traumatic for you. Whether it's violent or not violent, mine happened to be violent. While I was going through this, it was really torturous because I had just been through the experience itself, and then my brain kind of making me go through it again and again was awful, and I couldn't figure out how to make it stop. But I also knew that this was like over the course of a weekend. I also knew that on that Monday I would be seeing a therapist, because I come from a middle-class background where therapy is okay, violence against women is not okay. These are things I've been socialized and taught. I was in America at the time. I spoke the language. I could read billboards, the yellow pages, or the old-fashioned guide for looking up telephone numbers. And I knew where to find this information. I had a job that provided me with health insurance and emergency psychological support. I'm not really, it was a law firm, so I don't know what that emergency support was all about, but it was there. So I had all this access, and I was supported by friends and family as well. It didn't stop the torture of that trauma loop, but I knew that help was coming, and I knew that I was supported and surrounded. And while I was going through that, I was thinking, but what about the women that don't have this? So I was in Los Angeles, where there are very extreme differences between wealthy people and not wealthy people. There's a really large immigrant population, both documented and undocumented. There is extreme poverty, there is extreme racism, and that was there 21 years ago. That's not something that just arrived. And I was thinking about the women who are living in these other areas, who are maybe undocumented and don't speak English and can't read the billboards or can't find the support, or who come from cultures where it's considered okay to hit a woman or commit violence against a woman, or where it's considered not okay to speak openly about needing support for experiencing sexual violence. About women who couldn't quit their job or even take time away from their job for a half an hour to go see a therapist, or didn't have health insurance. And I thought, how many of these women suffer for the rest of their lives? How many of these women kill themselves just to stop that trauma loop? And how many women suppress it and then lead constricted lives that carry the burden of a trauma that someone else has visited upon them, that they have no responsibility for. And in their attempts to adapt a life around that trauma, how many women pass that trauma on, or adaptive behavior on, to next generation? And I thought, this is something that I want to stop. I want to help these women. And at that time, I didn't know how. I didn't know what I was going to do or how I was going to do it. I knew I had to help myself first.
Yeah.
But that's basically when that idea was born. over the course of my time learning martial arts and learning how to put this stuff together in a way that made sense and was easily transmissible to other people, helped me develop Pretty Deadly as a program and realize that, oh, okay, this is the way that I was looking for, you know, and that day 21 years ago when I thought, what can I do so that other women don't have to go through this, because this is horrible and it's unfair. And granted, we live in a very unfair world, but this is violence visited upon innocent people randomly. So that's how I came to it.
Yes, thank you for sharing the whole story. I think it's not easy to be vulnerable and to say it. But yeah, it's beautiful, and it's also, I think, answering the first question a lot as well. Like the intention that you have is actually, yeah, to offer support, like to women who have gone through this trauma or other people who have gone through this kind of trauma, and to get like to make sort of an exit, or at least to build a path to exit this trauma loop.
It's more building a path. I'm not qualified in psychology in such a way that I can offer that kind of emotional support that a professional can offer. But what I can do, and what I do through Pretty Deadly, is I can just show someone a path, as you say. Here's a possible path that works, and without pushing too hard or making people feel obligated, hopefully introducing it in a way that is fun, actually, because even though I've been speaking very seriously, the heart of our classes are actually supposed to be fun. So normally I don't say all this stuff in a class, but where people can make those own connections. So I'm just trying to help give people a few tools to feel more secure and more confident, to not beat themselves up so much if they have experienced something. But it's up to them to put those things together. I can't do that for people.
Yeah, but it can be a really important.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I think it can be a really important element in overcoming the trauma. And of course, for some people, it might not work, or it might be, I don't know, too much or not the right path. But like, I think it can be a really, really like crucial factor in overcoming it. And of course, it's not the whole thing, but like, of course, the trauma survivors need other elements as well. But yeah, this seems like a really big part. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just it's a hope that it's kind of a hope of seeing where you are actually capable sometimes is the first step you need to be able to take the next step. You know, it's hard to take a step forward if you don't know there's ground underneath you and you're not sure if your shoes are going to hold up or anything. So if you have someone to help you physically take that step, and it's a lot easier to take the next one, and then it gets easier as you go along. And it's often that first step that people who have suffered trauma get stuck in, not by any fault of their own, but it's why people suffer trauma for so long, or post-traumatic stress disorder. There's no, I think, in traditional trauma therapy and post-trauma therapy, the physical element is really missing from a lot of those therapies. So, and again, I never want to present Pretty Deadly as a therapy session.
Yes.
But at the same time, I do want to introduce that physical element in the hopes that for those who need it, it helps them make that first step. For those who maybe aren't suffering trauma, hopefully they get something else out of it, you know, which is an appreciation of just how powerful our bodies and our biological self-defense systems really are.
Yes, and to not be in this fear of like even though I haven't experienced trauma, like I always it like on a daily basis experience this fear of and like feel unprotected, and that like I can't like I can't walk the street at night alone and not think about all of these what is going to happen. And it's like it just becomes so normal. It just becomes like a daily experience, something that is completely part of us, to live in this fear, or constantly calculating, is it can I be alone on the street right now?
Right. And that, I mean, I have to say, as a woman, that makes me so angry that so many women in the world live smaller lives because of this fear. And because sometimes it's just too exhausting, you know, to go out and be like, I want to take a walk in the evening, but then I'm going to have to keep all these other things in mind. And, you know, I'll just stay home. That's a more extreme example. But I think when we learn how to flip that story around a little bit as well, you know, the calculations that we make as women walking down the street at night or walking across a public square to determine whether we're safe, to assess risk, are actually the same kind of tools that governments train high-level spies, for lack of a better word. I know they don't use the word spy anymore, but whatever it is, you know, like MIA, CIA, NSA, whoever they are in Germany. I don't know all the different names, but these are actually really incredible tools that people have formal training to gain, except that women and girls have been learning how to do this our whole lives. We're amazingly good at it, and we never really think about it. What I'm hoping through Pretty Deadly is that we learn to trust our bodies and we learn to trust our reflexes a bit, so that these amazing skills that we have, instead of spending half of our energy using these skills just to stay safe, we can take these amazing skills and put them towards pursuing educations or building careers or following dreams.
And for other questions I had, yeah, what are the kind of the traits and yeah, the essential traits that and skills that the person who is doing what you do needs to be a kind of self-defense instructor?
Essential traits would be I don't want to say a strong sense of leadership, but if you're the kind of person that's always the one who organizes all the stuff for all your friends, then that would be the right trait. That's not always a leadership trait. That's kind of like a motivational trait. So that kind of, I guess it's kind of like a community management trait in some way. But a lot of self-motivation, of course, a lot of energy, humility, a willingness to learn from the people that you're teaching, and also a willingness to allow people to be who they are and not who you think they should be. And a sense of humor is really important, actually. All the reasons that Pretty Deadly exists and all the work that we're trying to do in the world are serious.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you can't have fun. And I very firmly believe that you learn a lot more when you're having fun than you do when you're frightened. So I think it's important for an instructor to also have a sense of humor. There's a lot in Pretty Deadly in the structure of the classes and the courses that's frankly just silly. I mean, it's useful, but it's silly. you have to be willing to be silly.
Mm-hmm. And what is the example of like the silliness that
The example of the silliness would be the Pretty Deadly Dance, which is, so we end every single class with a dance that combines the movements that we've learned that day. I'm the choreographer of this dance. I am not a choreographer. It's really clunky. It's really silly. It's just goofy.
Okay.
You have to be, if you're looking for something that looks cool on the dance floor, this is not the place for you. But if you're willing to do this very goofy dance and have a laugh at the end of the day, then great.
It sounds very dangerous, like Pretty Deadly Dance.
I know it does sound dangerous. I'm a big fan of really silly martial arts movies, and it was inspired by the movie Kung Fu Hustle.
Oh, okay. Because I know one thing that I saw, and it was crazy. It was like I guess it's really a thing. There's like a drunk Tai Chi.
Drunken Master.
A drunken master, and it's amazing in a way, because like he's making all of these movements like as if he's drunk, but there are still kung fu movements.
Yeah,
there are a lot of types of this, like there's a tiger kung fu, there's like so many different forms.
It's also an inspiration though, because one of the things we teach, not necessarily to refugee groups, but in certain courses that we have, one of the things we teach is how do you defend yourself if you're drunk or you're on drugs? Because again, I very firmly believe it's not my place to judge what you do, but you always have a right to defend yourself, always, even if you've decided to take a little break from reality. So how do you move in those ways? How do you defend yourself? You especially when you're feeling a little extra loose or maybe not in full control. So when I was first devising that part of our program, that's exactly what popped into mind was Drunken Master. Which, to be honest with you, almost every martial arts school has played with because it's such a brilliant thing.
Yeah, thank you a lot for all of the answers and for taking the time. Yeah, it has been really a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure to talk to you.
I'll talk to you soon.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.